My parents adored my sister and showed absolutely no interest in my wedding. They laughed, saying, "The real celebration will be your sister's wedding." And my sister mocked, "If it were me, I couldn't handle such a cheap venue, lol. They didn't attend my wedding and completely ignored it. But after the ceremony ended, they showed up in a panic. I was at an old church in Cambridge, discussing arrangements for my wedding. The historic building of First Parish in Cambridge exuded a nostalgic atmosphere that wrapped my heart in warmth. Soft light filtered through the stained glass windows, gently illuminating the wooden pews that held over a century of history. In late May, a refreshing breeze lifted the petals of blooming azaleas in the church garden. This season in New England is perfect for weddings. The majestic sound of the pipe organ echoed through the church, filling my heart with solemnity. "Are you sure about this venue?" The church coordinator looked at me anxiously. Indeed, our budget was less than half the average wedding cost in this area, but Nathan and I had decided paying off his student loans would take priority over an extravagant wedding. "Yes, this is the perfect place for us," I answered with a smile. The reception at the adjacent Harvest restaurant would provide ample space for about close friends and colleagues. Inside the historic brick building, elegant chandelier light cast soft shadows on white tablecloths. Nathan and I were just beginning our careers as researchers. I worked in a biology lab at Harvard, while he was developing new treatments at MIT. Our combined annual income was $175,000. While not a small amount, we couldn't afford an extravagant wedding considering our student loan payments. But this was our choice. Living honestly with the one I love, that's what I believed would make us happy. That evening, I returned home to find what seemed like a scene from another world. The living room was piled high with luxury brand wedding catalogs, and my sister Vanessa sat there with her fiancé. Her fiancé James was an executive at a major pharmaceutical company, with an annual income exceeding $400,000. "Look, this is our wedding venue." Vanessa excitedly spread out a brochure for a luxury resort hotel. The budget was, which her fiancé's family would cover entirely. They expected over guests, a champagne tower, caviar, a full-course dinner by a top chef. Everything was extravagant. "How lovely!" Mother's eyes sparkled as she listened to my sister's wedding plans. Our parents had invested most of their $500,000 retirement fund in my sister's future. However, when the topic of my wedding came up, their expressions changed completely. "You're having your wedding in such a cheap church?" I could never show my face to my friends. Vanessa looked at me with contempt. That gaze held the same sense of superiority she'd had since childhood. "I'll attend Vanessa's wedding, but I won't come to yours." Mother's words pierced my heart like ice needles. Father just nodded silently. Their affection had always been directed toward my sister. Since childhood, Vanessa had been special, beautiful, sociable, living the life our parents had hoped for. Meanwhile, I had chosen the path of a modest researcher. On my way home, fighting back tears, I called Nathan. His warm voice resonated through the receiver. "It's okay, Olivia. We have our own happiness. Even without your family's understanding, we have 50 dear friends who will celebrate with us." Those words gave me strength. True, it might not be flashy, but this wedding would be true to who we are. Though modest, it would be filled with heart. The spring breeze gently swept through Harvard University's campus, visible from the train window with its fresh greenery. Nathan and I would walk our own path, even without our family's understanding, believing that love and honesty would bring true happiness. On the morning of our wedding day, it was a magnificent May day, as if heaven itself was blessing us. The morning sun touched the spire of First Parish in Cambridge, warming the red brick walls that had witnessed over a century of history. In the church garden, fully bloomed azaleas swayed in the spring breeze, their falling petals like nature's own blessing of confetti. From early morning, my best friend Sarah and my lab colleagues had gathered. They carefully arranged flowers one by one on the white tablecloths. Roses, baby's breath, and seasonal flowers created a simple but heartfelt altar. The modest decorations harmonized perfectly with the solemn atmosphere of this historic church. Sarah smiled at me kindly. She had stayed late the night before helping with preparations. While my wedding dress wasn't from a luxury brand, my grandmother's antique lace veil added a special radiance to the simple dress. "Your mother and Vanessa?" Emily asked hesitantly as she helped me dress. "They're not coming," I answered with a smile, trying to keep the pain from showing in my expression. My parents' and sisters' seats would be empty. But that was unavoidable. When the pipe organ's solemn tones began to echo through the church, I took a deep breath. Standing at the entrance to the aisle, about guests watched me with warm smiles. Lab colleagues, college friends, and Nathan's family. Not a huge crowd, but each person's smile filled the space with love. And there was Nathan, waiting at the altar. Tears of joy glistened in his eyes. "My beloved Olivia." Nathan's voice resonated through the quiet church. "Meeting you was the greatest miracle of my life. We may not be wealthy, but let's live honestly. supporting each other, encouraging each other, and sometimes scolding each other, and above all, never forgetting to be grateful. Each of his words reached straight to my heart. Light streaming through the stained glass windows enveloped us gently, like a blessing from heaven. During the ceremony, I noticed the empty family seats. But strangely, I felt no sadness. Instead, gratitude for those who filled this place with warm smiles filled my heart. After the ceremony, the reception began at the adjacent Harvest restaurant. In the historic brick building, soft chandelier light gently illuminated the space. The aroma of New England clam chowder wafted through the air, accompanied by the pleasant conversation of guests. Then came an unexpected visitor. "May I have a moment?" The speaker was Thomas Walker, a prominent figure in the pharmaceutical industry who had shown interest in my research. "Dr. Miller, it was a beautiful ceremony." Thomas approached us with a warm smile and offered his congratulations. This kind of heartfelt ceremony truly represents genuine happiness. Though not extravagant, it's a wedding full of love and sincerity. I was deeply moved. His words brought tears to my eyes. Thomas's expression clouded slightly. "By the way, where are your father, mother, and sister? Are they unwell?" That question created quiet ripples. No one had known that my family had intentionally abstained from attending. But with this question, everything would come to light. The reception continued slowly. The delicate flavor of grilled Atlantic salmon, seasonal vegetable sides, and Boston cream pie for dessert. Though not luxurious, each dish contained the chef's sincere care. The guests' speeches were filled with warmth. The lab professor spoke of our dedicated research approach. College friends talked about our meeting and subsequent growth. And Nathan's parents expressed their joy in welcoming me as a new family member. In that warm atmosphere, I realized anew. True happiness can't be measured by material things or money. It lies in the bonds with people who genuinely celebrate with us. Outside the window, the setting sun over Harvard Square cast gentle light, as if reluctant to end the day. A soft bell rang in the Harvest restaurant's reception hall announcing the dessert service. At that moment, Thomas Walker's expression froze. He stared at his smartphone screen, then looked intently at me. His gaze held indescribably complex emotions. "Dr. Miller." His voice maintained its usual dignity, but carried a hint of sadness. "I need to ask you about this post." The smartphone screen he showed displayed my sister Vanessa's Instagram account, posted just 30 minutes ago. There was a shocking message alongside photos of her surrounded by luxury brand bags and dresses. "I'm too embarrassed to attend my sister's cheap wedding. I wouldn't want my friends to see such a modest wedding. Real celebs understand, right?" The post had likes from our parents. Even a comment from Mother. "That's right, the real celebration will be our beloved Vanessa's wedding." The atmosphere in the venue instantly froze. I took a deep breath and slowly closed my eyes. When I opened them, there were no tears. My voice sounded surprisingly calm. My family refused to attend my wedding, saying it was embarrassing. The sound of 50 guests holding their breath was audible. Everyone had believed the pretense of sudden family illness. Thomas quietly stood up. His expression showed a severity I'd never seen before. "I apologize, but I must attend to an urgent matter." He took out his smartphone and quickly began making calls. "Mr. President, I deeply apologize, but a serious issue has arisen. Urgent action is needed regarding our dealings with the Richardson family." With those words, events began moving rapidly. In one corner of the venue, a video conference with multiple executives had begun. The faces on the screen all wore serious expressions. "We should immediately review the $50 million deal with luxury real estate development. Due to ethical concerns, we should reassess all business relationships." The executives' voices quietly but surely moved the situation forward. Thomas himself was drafting a mass email to industry contacts. Clear words lined the text. "Due to the discovery of serious ethical issues, we are immediately reviewing all business relationships with the Richardson family. Actions that disregard basic human values are incompatible with our corporate philosophy." By then, inquiries from multiple business partners had begun flooding James's company. Smartphone notifications continued ringing like warning bells. "What have you done?" James's angry call to my sister. His voice was so loud it could be heard outside the restaurant. "The company's reputation is ruined. All contracts will be void." Immediately after, my sister's tearful call to Mother. "Mom, this is terrible. James is furious. The company is in trouble." Panic spread like an avalanche. Father received an urgent call from a friend warning him, "Things have gotten serious." The entire family panicked and began rushing to the wedding venue. Meanwhile, I quietly sipped my champagne. The sweetness of the Boston cream pie felt strangely pleasant. Beside me, Nathan gently squeezed my hand. The atmosphere in the venue had changed, like the calm before a storm. Guests watched quietly, but with tangible tension, anticipating what would unfold. Thomas stood before us again and bowed deeply. I sincerely apologize for causing such a disturbance on your special day. I gently shook my head. No, thank you for revealing the truth. Just then, the restaurant door burst open with a loud sound. There stood my family, with hurried footsteps. My parents and sisters' expressions were completely distraught, having lost all their usual dignity and arrogance. Mother's makeup was smeared, her appearance disheveled in a way she would never normally allow. Vanessa, though wearing a luxury brand dress, was pale and trembling. Father tried to speak but kept losing his words, just standing there. Olivia, please. Mother's cry echoed through the venue. Her voice held none of its usual haughtiness. Instead, it dripped with pure fear and desperation. James's company is in trouble. Do something. My sister cried out, nearly collapsing. Big sister, help me. The engagement might be called off. Please, do something. The air in the venue instantly froze. All 50 guests held their breath at this unexpected development. The chandelier light illuminated this dramatic scene like stage lighting. I slowly raised my champagne glass to my lips. Though we hadn't prepared crystal champagne, this modest vineyard sparkle held our own pride and dignity. After taking a sip, I spoke quietly. Would you please be seated? It's poor manners to cause a scene in front of everyone. At those words, Mother seemed to come to her senses, suddenly realizing there were guests present. Oh yes, of course. Mother sat down flusteredly, and Father and my sister followed suit. Next to me, Nathan gently squeezed my hand. His warmth gave me strength. My sister began speaking through her sobs. All of James's company's $50 million in deals might be cancelled. If that happens, the engagement. My life, isn't this the result of you mocking my wedding as cheap and posting about it on social media? Thomas Walker stood up, interrupting my sister's words. His expression held severity but also dignity. Richardson family. His voice quietly but surely resonated through the venue. This is no longer just a family matter. It's a serious ethical issue that goes to the core of our business. My parents' and sisters' faces grew even paler. Discrimination based on social status and economic power. Abandonment of family love. And publicly flaunting these actions on social media. These acts directly oppose the ethical values our industry holds most dear. Thomas quietly scrolled through my sister's post on his smartphone. Cheap wedding, can't show it to my friends, and the likes from parents. This post is already causing major ripples throughout the industry. Father's shoulders slumped. Currently, we're receiving numerous inquiries from business partners, questioning whether we should review our dealings with the Richardson family. But as my sister desperately tried to make excuses, I quietly raised my hand. Vanessa, be quiet. At those words, my sister fell silent. I had never spoken to her in such a strong tone before. This is the fruit of the seeds you sowed, nothing more, nothing less. I picked up my dessert fork. While quietly cutting into the Boston cream pie, I continued. You couldn't celebrate my wedding as family. Instead, you mocked and despised it. How can anyone trust you as business partners? A heavy silence hung over the venue. In that silence, I slowly brought the dessert to my mouth. The gentle sweetness of the custard cream melted on my tongue. But, big sister, we're family, aren't we? At my sister's anguished cry, I tilted my head gently. Family? How interesting. Just a few hours ago, my wedding was too embarrassing to attend, wasn't it? Oh yes. Your words about how real celebs understand were quite impressive too. I bet you didn't expect that definition of a celeb to be overturned so quickly. At those words, my sister completely broke down. She collapsed, dragging her luxury brand dress on the floor. Actually, there might be a solution. Thomas spoke again. All eyes in the venue focused on him. Resolving ethical issues requires appropriate, sincere response. And that response cannot be just a formal apology. He placed his smartphone on the table and continued. One stone, complete retraction and apology for the social media posts. Then, a detailed explanation of the circumstances, and a written statement of reflection. Ethics training would also be necessary, Father asked in a thin voice. Then the deals would know, that's just the minimum response. Rebuilding trust will require much more time and effort. At these words, the color drained from my entire family's faces. That's when Nathan quietly stood up. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Vanessa, his voice maintained its usual gentleness, but carried inner strength. Value isn't necessarily measured by money or outward luxury. It exists in human sincerity, consideration, and love. Nathan placed his hand gently on my shoulder. This a cheap wedding has the heartfelt blessings of 50 precious people, and those blessings are priceless. The gathered guests quietly nodded. At that moment, large tears fell from my parents' and sister's eyes. They were tears of genuine regret, unlike any I'd seen before. The spring in Cambridge embraced the city with the same gentleness as it had years ago. In front of First Parish in Cambridge, azaleas were once again in full bloom, swaying in the wind. Under those petals, a little girl ran around with a smile. Emma, be careful when you run, I called out with a smile. My 3-year-old daughter danced among the flower petals like a spring fairy. Her eyes held Nathan's gentleness. In these 5 years, our lives had changed dramatically. Nathan's research on new treatments bore fruit, bringing collaboration offers from several pharmaceutical companies. I secured an associate professor position at Harvard University, and above all, the birth of our little one. Emma's presence brought new joy and meaning to our lives. Meanwhile, Vanessa paid a heavy price.
On my 18th
Due to the impact
birthday,
of that day's
but the
social
next
media post, her engagement to James was called off, and her dream of a lavish wedding at a luxury resort hotel vanished. Most of our parents' retirement fund that they had invested also diminished due to stock market crashes. Vanessa stayed secluded at our parents' home for a while. Then one day, she suddenly decided to move to a small city. There she started working at a small flower shop. She sold all her luxury brand bags and dresses, beginning a modest life. "You know," a customer told me, "the flowers you arrange warm my heart," she wrote in her letter. Perhaps the daily interaction with small flowers' honest beauty, rather than expensive vases filled with luxurious blooms, gradually changed her. Our parents changed significantly too. With their retirement fund reduced, they had to give up their planned retirement dream. But surprisingly, this brought positive changes to them. Rather than a luxurious retirement, spending time with family is more important, Mother whispered while holding Emma. Father nodded silently while gently patting his granddaughter's head. Now, meeting in front of this church for monthly family lunches has become our tradition. Of course, not everything was resolved overnight. Rebuilding trust took considerable time. But through this process, we gradually learned what true family bonds mean. The other day, when Vanessa visited my lab after a long while, she gazed at Harvard Square's fresh greenery through the window and quietly began speaking. That wedding day taught me something important. True value isn't about money or appearances. It's found in human connections and genuine caring. Her eyes no longer held their former superficiality. Instead, they reflected genuine warmth. Thomas Walker maintained his strict approach as promised. However, watching my family's sincere remorse and efforts, he gradually opened the path to rebuilding trust. People make mistakes. What's important is what they learn from those mistakes and how they grow, he reportedly said at a recent business meeting. Now, we're building a new form of family. It might not be perfect, but I believe true affection grows within that imperfection. Emma still plays under the azalea petals. The spring sunlight gently illuminates her smile. Come on, it's almost lunchtime. Everyone's waiting, sharing meals with family, such simple happiness. Perhaps that day 5 years ago taught us its importance in an unexpected way. At Harvest Restaurant, white tablecloths are laid as always, with chandelier light softly swaying. The meal isn't extravagant, but the joy of sharing this time together seems more valuable than any luxury cuisine. Emma, Grandma, and Grandpa are here. Watching my daughter happily run to them, I smiled quietly in my heart. Life sometimes takes unexpected turns, but each twist and turn leads us to the right place. A spring breeze gently swept through Harvard Square. A tea and elite family dinner. My brother-in-law CEO mocked my small business. She can't even afford a proper office. His biggest client stood up. Actually, that's my daughter's company. I smiled as my brother-in-law's face turned white, because he had no idea. The crystal glasses clinked against fine china, as Sarah Thompson, my sister, hosted another one of her elite family dinners. I sat quietly at the far end of the table watching my brother-in-law Marcus, the self-proclaimed business genius, hold court with his usual audience of admirers. At 42, he wore his CEO status like a crown, each word dripping with the kind of confidence that only came from never having faced real failure. And that's how I closed the Anderson merger, he concluded, basking in the appreciative murmurs from our gathered family. Biggest deal of the quarter. Some people just understand business at a different level. His eyes flickered to me, lips curling into what my sister probably thought was a charming smile. I took another sip of wine, already knowing what was coming. These monthly family dinners have become Marcus's favorite stage for his particular brand of subtle cruelty. Speaking of business, he turned fully towards me now. Claire, how's that little, what do you call it, consulting thing of yours? It's going well, I replied evenly, noting how my sister Sarah straightened in her chair, eager for the show to begin. At 38, I learned that the best defense against Marcus's barbs was calm dignity. Still working from home, right? He chuckled, swirling his expensive bourbon. You know, when Sarah told me her sister was in business too, I expected something more professional. How can anyone take you seriously without even a proper office? My mother shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Dad suddenly found his roasted vegetables fascinating. It long ago chosen their side in the family dynamic, and it wasn't mine. My client seemed satisfied, I said, spearing a piece of perfectly cooked salmon. Marcus had insisted on catering from the city's most expensive restaurant, another chance to display his wealth. Clients? Marcus barked out a laugh. Is that what we're calling the local coffee shops and boutiques now? You know, Claire, if you ever want real business advice. Actually, a deep voice cut through the dining room. Her client list is quite impressive. All heads turned to Richard Anderson. Yes. That Anderson of the merger Marcus had just been bragging about. He'd been quietly observing from the other end of the table where Marcus had seated him as the guest of honor. In fact, Anderson continued setting down his fork. My daughter's company has been trying to get on her waiting list for months. Claire's firm is rather selective about who they take on. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. I could hear Sarah's sharp intake of breath, see Marcus's face transition from confidence to confusion. Your daughter's company? Marcus managed his voice suddenly less certain. Megan Anderson, CEO of Horizon Tech. Richard smiled warmly in my direction. Claire's firm handled the Matthews Group acquisition last year. Brilliant strategy, by the way. When Megan told me who was behind it, I could hardly believe someone so young had orchestrated such a complex deal. But then real talent doesn't need corner offices to prove itself, does it? I watched the color drain from Marcus's face as realization dawned. The Matthews acquisition had been the talk of the business world, a $400 million deal that had transformed the tech landscape. And I orchestrated it from my home office, the one he'd been mocking moments before. I had no idea, Marcus stammered, his earlier bravado evaporating. Obviously, I replied softly, allowing myself a small smile. More wine, anyone? Sarah's hand shook as she gripped her glass, her perfect hostess composure cracking. Our mother's mouth had fallen open slightly, and Dad was now staring at me as is seeing me for the first time. Claire, Marcus started, his tone shifting to something almost ingratiating. Why did you ever mention that I handle major corporate acquisitions, that my little consulting thing advises Fortune 500 companies? I set down my wine glass carefully. You never asked, Marcus. You were too busy telling everyone how successful you are. Richard Anderson chuckled. And speaking of success, Claire, I hope you'll consider taking Horizon Tech on as a client. Megan's been quite persistent about wanting to work with you. Of course, Marcus jumped in. Anything for family. I'm sure Claire would be happy to. I'm afraid my schedule is quite full. I interrupted smoothly. But, Mr. Anderson, please tell Megan to have her team send over the proposal. I'll review it personally. Marcus's face flushed red. The Anderson merger he'd been bragging about minutes ago. His biggest deal of the quarter was worth less than half of what I handled for Matthews. And now his direct line to Richard Anderson was watching me with obvious respect while barely acknowledging Marcus's presence. Claire. Sarah found her voice, though it trembled slightly. Why didn't you tell us all these years? Tell you what, Sarah. That while you and Marcus were mocking my little business, I was building one of the most respected consulting firms in the industry. That the home office you love to ridicule has closed deals worth billions? I dabbed my lips with the linen napkin. Would you have believed me, or would you have just found new ways to diminish my success? The truth hung heavy in the air. They wouldn't have believed me. They've been too invested narrative of Marcus as the family's business genius, and me as the struggling younger sister who couldn't quite measure up. But your clothes, Sarah gestured weakly at my simple black dress. Your car, you live in that small house? Because I don't need to prove anything to anyone, I replied. Success speaks for itself. It doesn't need designer labels or luxury cars to be real. Richard Anderson nodded approvingly. That's precisely why your reputation in the industry is so sterling, Claire. No flash, all substance. The exact opposite of his eyes flickered to Marcus briefly. Certain other approaches. Marcus's hand tightened around his bourbon glass. His carefully cultivated image of business brilliance was crumbling. And with it, his standing in the family. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Mr. Anderson, I turned to Richard, ignoring Marcus's attempts to catch my eye. I'd love to hear more about Horizon Tech's expansion plans. Perhaps over dinner next week. I know a wonderful little place. The new French restaurant on 5th, Marcus interjected desperately. I'm a member there, I called. Actually, I smiled. I own it. One of my small side investments. Nothing like running a major corporation, of course, but it turns a nice profit. The restaurant Marcus had been trying to get a membership to for months. The one he'd bragged about finally getting into. He'd never known that every time he dined there, he'd been in my establishment. Sarah's wine glass slipped from her fingers, staining the pristine tablecloth red. But for once, she didn't rush to clean it up. She was too busy staring at me, really seeing me for the first time in years. The thing about success, I continued, standing up from the table, is that it doesn't need an audience to be real. While you were all focused on Marcus's latest promotion or Sarah's country club membership, I was building something lasting, something real. I reached for my simple leather handbag, not designer, but handmade by an artisan I'd helped start their business. Thank you for dinner, Sarah. Mr. Anderson, I'll have my office contact you about that dinner next week. As I walked toward the door, I heard Marcus's strained voice. Claire, wait. Perhaps we should discuss. Discuss what? I turned back briefly. How you've spent years mocking my business? How you treated me like a failure because I didn't brag about my success? Or maybe how you're suddenly interested in my little consulting thing now that you know who my clients are? The silence was deafening. Sarah had sunk back in her chair, her perfect dinner party in ruins. Our parents were looking anywhere but at me and Marcus. Marcus looked like a man watching his carefully constructed world crumble. Send me the dinner bill, Sarah, I called over my shoulder. I know how Marcus hates to spend money on family charity cases. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click, leaving them to digest not just their expensive catered meal, but the realization that they'd spent years underestimating exactly the wrong person. And this was just the beginning, because what they didn't know, what Marcus was about to find out, was that his company's upcoming merger, the one he'd been counting on to secure his position as CEO, was about to face an unexpected complication, one that had everything to do with the sister-in-law he dismissed for so long. The morning after the dinner party, my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages from Sarah, voicemails from Marcus, even emails from my parents, all suddenly desperate to clear up any misunderstandings. I smiled, remembering Marcus's face when Richard Anderson had revealed who I really was, but I wasn't interested in their belated attempts at reconciliation. I had a merger to stop. You see, what Marcus didn't know, what he'd been too arrogant to investigate, was that his company's upcoming merger wasn't just another deal. It was a carefully orchestrated plan, one I've been developing for months. Claire, my assistant's voice came through the intercom of my home office. Yes. The same one Marcus had mocked. Mr. Anderson is on line 1. I picked up the phone, settling into my ergonomic chair. My little home office might not have impressed Marcus, but its technology rivaled any corporate headquarters. Richard, good morning. Claire. His warm voice filled the line. I must say dinner last night was enlightening. Your brother-in-law seems to be having quite the morning. He's been trying to reach me since dawn, I could imagine. Marcus's entire career hinged on this merger, the one he thought would cement his position as CEO, the one he'd been bragging about at every family gathering for months. Has he figured it out yet? I asked, pulling up the merger documents on my triple monitors. Not yet. Richard chuckled, though he might want to take a closer look at who's been quietly buying shares in his company over the past 6 months. Yes, the investment firm that had been accumulating a significant stake in Marcus's company, the one operating through a series of shell companies, the one that through a complex web of corporations belonged to me. Claire. Sarah's name flashed on my phone again. I declined the call. Your sister seems persistent, Richard observed. They all are now that they know. I signed off on another document, watching as my ownership percentage ticked up another fraction. Amazing how success changes people's perspective. The next few days were a symphony of panic from Marcus's corner. He finally started digging into the merger details, probably hoping to impress me with his business acumen. Instead, he discovered something terrifying. His company was being systematically purchased by an unknown entity. You have to help me. He cornered me outside my favorite coffee shop. Not coincidentally, one of my first consulting clients. Claire, whatever bad blood there is between us, this is my career we're talking about. I took a sip of my artisanal latte. Funny. I thought it was just a little coffee shop last month when you mocked me for helping them expand. I was wrong. Okay. He ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in a way Sarah would have hated. I was arrogant and stupid, but please. If this merger falls through, then what, Marcus? You'll have to work your way up like everyone else. Start something from scratch. Build a business without riding on your family name. His face paled. We both knew he'd never built anything himself. His CEO position had come through connections, not competence. The same connections he used to belittle me at every opportunity. My phone buzzed again. A notification from my legal team. Another block of shares acquired. We were getting close. The board meeting is next week, Marcus said desperately. They're expecting me to present the merger details. But this unknown buyer, if they gain controlling interest, then you'd be answerable to them. I finished for him. Imagine that. The great Marcus Thompson having to justify his business decisions to someone else. The realization dawned in his eyes slowly. Claire, the buyer, it's not. My phone buzzed again. A text from Richard Anderson. Megan's team just sent over the Horizon Tech proposal. Impressive plans. Shame about Marcus's company. They would have made a good partner if their leadership was different. I showed Marcus the text, watched as the last pieces clicked into place. You're going to destroy everything I've built, he whispered. No, Marcus. I'm going to show you what real business looks like. I stood up, smoothing my simple but immaculately tailored dress. The board meeting is at 2 p.m. next Thursday, correct? Don't worry about preparing anything. I'll be handling the presentation. The week that followed was chaos. Sarah showed up at my house twice, begging me to reconsider. He's family, she pleaded, as if she hadn't spent years treating me like an embarrassment. My parents tried next. Think about what this will do to the family name, Dad argued, the same family name that hadn't stopped them from laughing at Marcus's jokes about my cute little business. But the real satisfaction came at the board meeting. I walked into the room Marcus had dominated for so long, taking my seat at the head of the table. The other board members, old men who'd never questioned Marcus's leadership, stared in confusion. Gentlemen, I began as Marcus slumped in his chair. I represent Quantum Ventures, the investment firm that now holds a controlling interest in this company. We've reviewed the proposed merger extensively, and we have some concerns about the current leadership strategy. For the next hour, I methodically laid out every mistake Marcus had made, every rushed decision, every missed opportunity, every instance where he chosen flash over substance. The board members' expressions shifted from confusion to concern to outright alarm. Therefore, I concluded, our first act as majority shareholder will be to recommend new leadership, someone who understands that real business success isn't about corner offices or country club memberships. It's about solid strategy, careful planning, and actual results. Marcus stood up, his face red. You can't do this. I built this company, did you? I pulled out a folder because our analysis shows that company value has actually decreased under your leadership. The only thing keeping your position secure was this merger. A merger that as of this morning is no longer happening. The board erupted in chaos. Marcus tried to speak, but his voice was drowned out by angry shareholders demanding explanations. I sat quietly watching years of his carefully constructive facade crumble. Oh, and Marcus, I added as he headed for the door, his career in shambles. You might want to start looking for a new country club membership. The one you have is about to be discontinued. The aftermath was everything I planned for. Marcus was forced to resign, his reputation in tatters. Sarah's social circle, the one she used to mock my simple lifestyle, suddenly discovered that the sister they dismissed was now controlling one of the city's largest companies. My parents called the family meeting, probably hoping to salvage something from the wreckage. I attended out of curiosity. You've made your point, Mom said, her voice trembling. Surely we can fix this as a family. I looked around the table. Marcus without his designer suit and corporate swagger. Sarah, her perfect image tarnished by association. My parents finally forced to acknowledge that their golden couple wasn't so golden after all. Fix what? I asked calmly. I simply did business. Isn't that what Marcus always wanted for me to understand real business? But it's destroyed him, Sarah protested. His career, his reputation. No. I corrected her. His arrogance destroyed him. His need to diminish others to feel important. I just showed everyone what was already there. I stood up, gathering my things. The company will do better under new leadership. The shareholders will be happier. And Marcus, well, I hear there's good money in running a home-based business. If you can handle working without a proper office, that is. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. 5 years later, the company had doubled in value under new leadership. I'd merge it with Horizon Tech, creating one of the largest tech consultancies in the country. Marcus had tried starting his own firm, but without his corporate title and family connections, he discovered that business success required more than a corner office and an expensive suit. Sarah still hosted family dinners, though they were considerably less grand now. Sometimes when I attended, I'd catch Marcus staring at my simple clothes and modest lifestyle with new understanding. He finally learned what I'd known all along. Real success doesn't need to announce itself. The small home office where I built my empire remained unchanged. But now, on its wall, hung a framed photo from that last board meeting. Marcus's face as he realized that the sister-in-law he dismissed had orchestrated his downfall was a masterpiece of karmic justice. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success they never saw coming. As for me, I still prefer working from home, still drive my reliable car, still live in my comfortable but modest house. But now, when Marcus passes me in his much reduced circumstances, he understands a fundamental truth. True power isn't in what you show, it's in what you know. And I'd known all along exactly what I was building.